I suspect that the 17th Nancy Drew Diaries book went through a rewrite. That would explain why it was delayed a year and resurfaced with a story that doesn't match the original cover. Yes, I'm 50% sure Book 17 was rewritten. I'm about 99% sure that Book 18 has two authors. They have different writing styles. One is somewhat boring and doesn't seem to like Nancy Drew that much. The other author is more interesting and makes Nancy Drew into a kick-butt action hero who stops international criminals. You can guess which author I like better.
Argo Fump Book Review. Argo Fump Book Review.
This review is commissioned through Patreon. Nancy Drew's in Canada to be in a dog show. Ignore the cover. The cover shows her with 5 Scottish Terriers, which would have been an awesome scene. It never happens. Nancy is only showing one dog, and it's not a Scottish Terrier, it's a Bull Terrier. Close enough, I guess? Nancy is very nervous about performing in front of lots of people, and she's intimidated by all the other contestants. Someone puts chewing gum in a dog's fur. Oh no, not sabotage! Nancy reluctantly agrees to investigate, even though she really doesn't want to. This isn't the first book in the series where Nancy doesn't like solving mysteries. I'm still baffled as to why that is. It should be obvious that it's not a good idea to have the narrator hate the series' premise. The first third of the book is dog show stuff, and it's quite boring. It's mainly introducing the suspects, who are so similar I had trouble telling them apart. If the introduction had been limited to 15 or 20 pages, that would be fine, but it's more like 50 pages of introduction. Luckily, author number 2 takes over, and author number 2 doesn't hate mysteries. At a party, Nancy brags she's a great detective. Whenever she reads a mystery book, she always figures out the culprit by the end of the second chapter. Good for her. I wonder why she can't do the same thing in this book. Bess is kidnapped by a man in a wolf costume. A determined Nancy chases a man and discovers he's an Interpol agent. He's on the trail of an international diamond thief. Nancy just blew his cover in under 3 minutes. Get used to that. Nancy's way smarter and more effective than Interpol in this book. Nancy discovers the culprit left behind some weird stuff. Interpol later identifies it as pulp from a paper factory. Back to author number 1. Nancy talks to the dog show people again, and she's super nervous while doing her routine. I don't know why Nancy has such low self-esteem. She just outsmarted an Interpol agent by accident. Surely that would give her some confidence? Author number 2. The culprit sends Nancy a text message ordering her to stop her investigation. George traces the text message to determine where the culprit's lair is. This is in the middle of a blizzard. Nancy and George brave a blizzard to break into the culprit's lair. While George distracts the culprits, Nancy frees Bess. A culprit grabs them, but Nancy and Bess beat him up. This is a world of difference from Book 16, where Nancy stood in place and did nothing when the culprit grabbed her. The trio escapes outside and there's a big chase. Nancy and her friends are on some kind of snowmobile, while the culprits are in a car. They make a dangerous turn down a narrow alley in order to get away. See what I mean about Nancy being a kick-butt action hero? Back to author number 1. The next round of the dog show occurs. Nancy gathers all the suspects together for a confrontation scene. I found this to be just as boring as the introductory parts. It's just going through a laundry list of all the characters and what makes them suspicious. Humorously, it turns out that one of the fake-out suspects is a professional wrestler who confesses without prompting. The sabotage culprit also confesses. Author number 2 finishes the book. Nancy exposes the jewel smuggler, who sicks her dog on Nancy. Nancy survives with the help of a treat clicker that distracts the dog long enough for the professional wrestler to tackle the dog. Interpol has all the building's exits covered, but Nancy doesn't think they're up to the challenge. She finds the culprit herself, and there's a second confrontation scene where Nancy explains all the clues which gave the culprit away. One clue is her phone background. Instead of taking a picture of her dog, She used a stock photo. That is extreme laziness or extreme overconfidence. I'm not sure which. Obviously, Nancy stops the culprit herself, and Interpol is super impressed with her. The end. Post-book follow-up. The dog show sabotage was boring, especially because there was only one sabotage incident. It's not enough mystery and suspense to tide you over for the entire book. I had trouble telling the characters apart, and like book 16, it's a little weird to see Nancy Drew be so scared and unconfident. It felt like an inferior version of Boxcar Children number 35, The Mystery at the Dog Show. That book also had one-dimensional suspects whose actions and motives are interchangeable, but dang it, at least you could tell the suspects apart. And there was more than one sabotage incident. The diamond smuggling storyline was fantastic. No unconfident Nancy here. She's strong and determined, she beats up culprits, and her life is in danger for a good amount of the time. Yeah, it's unrealistic she outshines Interpol so easily, but it was still fun to read. I wish the entire book had been as good as the smuggling storyline. I would have been tempted to give it a 10 out of 10 if the whole book was like that. Instead, we've got a great storyline paired with a worse than normal sabotage storyline. The two stories don't balance, giving this book a disjointed feeling as it switches back and forth between one story and the other. The first 50 pages are mostly the boring story, the last 50 pages are mostly the good story, so the book starts badly and ends great. I give Nancy Drew Diaries number 18, The Stolen Show, a 4 out of 10.